Hi everyone, good morning. Um, my name is Samantha Alves. I am one of the volunteers in the Spiritus Center of Ireland, and I am going to be your host the for the talk today. I just want to make sure everything is working and you guys can hear me. So I'm just checking my phone here as well to see. It seems to be working, but I just wanted to make sure you guys also can hear me and everything is working fine. You can see me and everything as well. It seems to be working, but just make sure. If you guys could just give me a thumbs up, just so we can start. And good morning to everyone. I see a few people here already. Good morning, Camila. So all is working. Thank you so much, Camila, for letting me know. Thank you so much again, guys, for being here. So today we are going to talk about need for social life. This is a very interesting topic to me because I always kind of struggled with the sense that like sometimes society is not perfect and perhaps that is not the place to be. But I think it is a good reflection for us, especially at this time. So let's try and see if we can learn something from it. I did a little bit of research, and I just wanted to share with you guys what I searched. So hopefully, it will enlighten us a little bit in terms of need for social life. But before we start, I just want to do our initial prayer. So if you guys want to close your eyes, but if you don't want, that's fine as well. Let's elevate our thoughts to Jesus and to God and to our mentors, our spiritual friends, our guardian angels. Let's ask them for this talk this morning so we can learn a little bit more this morning, so we can understand more what is important to us, what will be beneficial to us, so we can improve, so we can progress, so we can become a better person and also a better human being, a better citizen, because in a society we are not only a human being, but we are also a citizen. So we ask for their enlightenment and for their help this morning. So be it. Okay, so let's start. I am going to share my screen. Hope you guys can see it. So let's start by a little bit of definition here. So I like doing this type of things because I like to show, I like to have a more practical approach to things, because to me it is really nice to learn spiritism, but also to put those things in practice and understand it in a more practical perspective, so I can apply it to my life. So I did a little bit of research, and I think it is important to understand, as I always say, the concept itself, because we can have an idea of what this concept could be about, but it's nice to contextualize what we want our talk to be about, let's say like that. So in terms of society, according to sociology, society is a group of individuals involved in persistent social interaction, or a large social group sharing the same geographical or social territory, typically subject to the same political authority and dominant cultural expectations. So, societies are characterized by patterns of relationships or social relations between individuals who share a distinctive culture and also institutions. A given society may be described as the sum of such relationships among its members. According to social sciences, a larger society often shows stratification or dominance patterns in subgroups. And society in general addresses the fact that an individual has rather limited means as an autonomous unit, right? So it, we can say that man is a social being. But before we explain the relationship between man and society, it might be worthwhile to explain the origin of society as well. Because we want to understand why we have society, right? So the origin of society, well, we have a number of theories, um, and those theories they put forward, they have been put forward to explain the origin of society. So one of them is the divine origin theory, that makes society the creation of God, just as God created all animals and inanimate objects of this world. So he created the society as well. This theory, with the passage of time, particularly in the 16th and 17th century, took the form of divine right theory, right? But sociologists have developed some lines of thought in relation to it. Then let's explore a few of them. So first we have the social contract theory. The social contract theory views society as an invention deliberately set up by men for certain ends. And according to this theory, all men were born free and equal, and individuals precedes society. And that is um, an important point here. So, according to social contract theory, individuals precedes society. Individuals made a mutual agreement and created society. According to Thomas Hobbes, an English philosopher, man in the state of nature was in constant conflict with their neighbors on account of their essentially selfish nature. In his words, the life of man was solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. And every man was an enemy to every man. So to protect himself against his brutality or this brutality, men organized themselves in society in order to live in peace with all. This other political philosopher, John Locke, he is another social contract thinker as well, and he believed that the state of nature was not a state of war. It was a state of peace, goodwill, mutual assistance, and preservation. The only disadvantage of this state of nature was that there was no recognized system of law and justice in it, according to him. So, to make up for this deficiency and ensure the exercise of their liberty, men entered a contract by which certain powers were granted to some people who would make use of them upon the community. Now, there's this other philosopher, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and in his book, The Social Contract. So he wrote this book called The Social Contract in 1762, I believe. So he held that men in the state of nature were equal, self-sufficient, and contented. They lived a life of idyllic, idyllic happiness and primitive simplicity. But growth in numbers and the quarrel arising among them required the establishment of civil society. Consequently, men entered a contract in which everyone, while united, would remain as free as before. So, this theory is, although very interesting, attracted a lot of criticism as well. So, some of the criticisms that we have about this theory is, so for many people, these theories do not provide an adequate explanation of the origin of society. I'm not going into details of all the criticism and all the nitty gritty. Here we will limit ourselves to certain important observations. So for historians, the origin of society is a somehow outcome of the social instinct of man. Force, no doubt, is an important factor in the evolution of society, but it cannot be regarded as the one and the only factor. So several other factors must have entered the formation of early society. It is as much a result of voluntary amalgamation as of force or conquest. So the social contract theory seems to assume that man as individual is prior to society, but this assumption, according to its critics, is erroneous because sociality is inborn in men. As soon as they saw the light of day with others like them, society became a fact. And so human beings are human beings inside and not outside of society. Society, in fact, emerged gradually. It did not come into existence on a particular day. So then we have another more accepted theory about the origin of society, which is the evolutionary theory. And then this kind of offers to many people a generally correct explanation of the origin of society. So according to this theory, society is not a make but a growth, right? So it is the result of gradual evolution. It is the continuous development from unorganized to organized, from less perfect to more perfect, and various factors helped in its development from time to time. So family was the earliest bond uniting men, and this aspect is important here. Family, this is a very important aspect. We are going to talk about this aspect more in details later on. So with the passage of time, men gave up their wandering habits, settled in villages and cities, and took the pastoral and agricultural life. The population began to multiply, wealth was accumulated, the idea of property took root, the economic life advanced. All this required changes in the forms of social relations. And men arrived at such advanced forms of social organizations as the nation state and this complex civilization that we live in today. The society did not come into being by a pact or a special provision. It emerged spontaneously and followed its own line of development. It passed through several stages of evolution before reaching its modern, complex form. So according to the French philosopher Auguste Comte, progress is inevitable, although it is gradual, slow, and uneven. And another one, Herbert Spencer, which is an English philosopher and sociologist, also agreed to the theory of social evolution. According to him, society is subject to the same laws of evolution to which all organic and inorganic matter is. So to him, also evolution meant progress. So human society has advanced from a savage state, if we can say like that, to a civilized state. But even in the civilized state, living in society can be challenging, right? So the socialization of the human creature, when not in high standard of equilibrium, without ethical structure, tends to become disturbing, falling into the madness that leads to delinquency and many other problems. And you could think, you know what, society is not a good system because people are not trustworthy. We suffer. It is not just. So, and it's not ideal, right? So we can think all of those things. But towards the end of this talk, I'll tell you a true story that most of you probably already know, but that not only can exemplify the challenges and difficulties we can have as social beings, but can also explain the need for social life, as developed in the evolutionary theory that I just mentioned, and also as proposed by the divine right theory. And of course, as we spiritists believe as well. So, what is the spiritism view of need for social life? And let me just stop here for a minute. Let me see if there is any questions or anything like that. Let me just check. Okay, so I don't see any questions. I see a lot of good mornings, and I see here a comment from Andrea Luis. Zen, gratitude and appreciation, blessings. Thank you so much, Zen. To you too. Okay, so let's continue. If you guys have any questions, just let me know, okay? You can type or even a comment, anything that you like in the comment box. Okay, so let's see, what is the Spiritism view of need for society or for social life? According to Spiritism, God made man to live in society, for we must progress. Alone, we cannot get all the skills and qualities we need. And to develop our intelligence and morals, we require the constant exchange of affections, knowledge, and experiences that is only possible with social life. It is through social relationships that we can have generosity, respect, patience, and tolerance for others. Now, if we go to the Spirit's book, there is a whole chapter to explain the law of society, which is chapter 7 in part 3 of the Spiritist book. So question 766. So Kardec asks the spirits, is societal life natural? And the spirits answer, certainly, God has made humans for living in society. Otherwise, it would have been needless for God to have endowed them with speech and all the other faculties necessary for a life of relationships. And it kind of makes sense if we think about it. So, since the ultimate goal of society is to promote the well-being and happiness of all its members, in order for this to be achieved, each one of us must observe certain rules dedicated or dictated by justice and moral, abstaining ourselves of everything that can jeopardize them, right? So, indeed, good order in society depends on human virtues as we become better aware of our duties to ourselves, like work, sense of responsibility, temperance, emotional control, etc., and to the community as well, of which we are an integral part, like courtesy, detachment, generosity, honesty, loyalty, tolerance. Fulfilling these duties, minor and less frequent will become the frictions and conflicts that afflict us. So the more stable will be the peace, and the more delightful the harmony that must reign within and among us. So after God, it is to society that man owns all the benefits of existence, all the advantages of civilization. We enjoy it, but precisely this joy, this participation imposes on us the duty to cooperate in the work itself. So close solidarity binds us to our society. We own it as it owns us as well. So if we continue in the Spirit's book, in question 768, the question says, in seeking societal living, do people only obey a personal sentiment, or is there a wider providential purpose involved? And the answer from the Spirit is, humans must progress. They cannot do so alone. However, since they do not all possess every faculty, they need contact with others. In isolation, they become brutish and withered. No single individual possesses the complete range of faculties. It is through societal union that individuals complete one another in order to ensure their own welfare and progress. It is because they need one another that they have been created to live in society and not in isolation. So it's pretty self-explanatory, I would say, this question, or actually this answer. So men should not isolate themselves from society, as they would not progress. Those who completely isolate themselves from society in order to escape the harmful contact of the world are really selfish, according to the spiritists, or to the spirits. Because God cannot be pleased with a life for which the individual will not be useful to anyone. It is through contact with others that we have the opportunity to do good, and doing good is our goal, is our ultimate duty in this world, right? So in the Spirit's literature, we read or we learn, without kindness there's no salvation, without charity there is no salvation. So we need to do good in order to progress and in order to better ourselves. So then, in question 767, is absolute isolation contrary to the law of nature? Yes, because people intrinsically seek societal living, and because all of them must cooperate in humankind's progress by mutually helping one another. So one interesting point here is that this book says, because people intrinsically seek societal living, and because all of them must cooperate in humankind's progress by mutually helping each other. So again, this explains that it is in combination with the evolutionary theory that says that the need for social life is intrinsic, right? And in it we need to cooperate so we can progress together. So the isolation to which a lot of times we contemporary individuals indulge ourselves, especially in these days that we have visual communication. So a lot of times we are replacing visual communication or replacing social contact, right? Person's social contact with visual communication. I understand that for a lot of us that are in lockdown at the moment and need to be in lockdown, that is necessary And that is very interesting because it's actually now showing us this exact point, this need that we have for social life. Because whereas before we wouldn't even mind not meeting a friend or, talking to them by phone or something like this, now that we only have this for a lot of us, I'm not saying everyone is the same situation. I know a lot of countries are in different situations, but so for a lot of us, that is the only communication we have with families and friends. So if we're sharing, if you're living with other people, then great, because you're not totally self-isolated. But I know that some people are also self-isolated at the moment. And thank God we have these technologies that we have today, because it's helping a lot, a lot. And this moment is actually making us think and showing us a lot of things that are important and we would take for granted in the past. So a lot of us are coming to some realizations with this the situation, the current situation. But even before the pandemic, when we had the opportunity to be with other people or do things for other people or live a more societal life, a lot of us would choose not to deliberately, because we didn't want the conflict, or because, well, because we thought it was hard and difficult, or there were problems and we didn't want to face them. And a lot of us, and I had this period of my life where I was kind of secluded, and I wanted to be, because I wanted to think. And it is important as well. Sometimes you need some time for yourself, some space, so you can evaluate things in your life. But this can't be forever, because we can't live alone. And that is what all these questions is showing us, and all these sociologists and all these theories shows us. We are social beings, and we need contact with other people, and we can only progress with this contact with other people. Now, so I think that I'm just thinking so many things here. So yeah, so those things are very, very important to us. And there's another question in the Spirit's book which says, we can understand that as a general principle, societal life is founded on the laws of nature. But since all tastes are also natural, why would a taste for absolute isolation be condemnable if someone finds satisfaction in it? So if someone likes to be alone, if someone prefers to live like that. So what the Spirit says is selfish satisfaction. There are also those who find satisfaction in drunkenness. Do you approve of that? God cannot consider as pleasing a life in which persons condemn themselves to being useless to everyone. So, two main aspects here, I would say, of societal life. One is that we have this innate necessity, and the second is we need to be useful. So, and I'm saying that because sometimes we are we are having contact with other people, we are in the society, but we are not being useful, not to others and not even to ourselves, because it's true, those things that we do for the people, that we also help ourselves. Again, without charity, there is no salvation. So, continuing, in question 770, we have what is to be thought of those who live in absolute seclusion in order to escape the pernicious contact of the world? And then the spirit's answer is doubly selfish. But if such seclusion, actually, Kardec continues, but if such seclusion has expiation as its purpose through the imposition of harsh privations, isn't it meritorious? And the spirit's answer, doing mostly good rather than evil is the best expiation. Through such seclusion, they avoid one evil only to fall into another, since they neglect the law of love and charity. So here they are being very explicit about these two things, right? So you could think that isolating yourself or being secluded from society, you are doing something good. You are there so you can think, so you can, come to some understandings that you don't have. But in this question, it's clear that if you do that forever, right, you are actually neglecting the law of love and charity. Now, relationships, therefore, must begin in the family. And I said that this is an important point, right? So participating in domestic activities, seeking to solve problems and difficulties is important. So it is important to structure the family, which is the cornerstone of society, the first group where human beings experience the gift of conviviality, emotional security, moral experience. And in question 775, what we have is, what would be the result for society if family ties were relaxed? And the answer is a magnification of selfishness. So families are important because it is probably the smallest sample of society. We can think of society as forming itself from the simple to the complex, right? So from the family to the neighborhood, from the neighborhood to the city, and so on. The Christian experience is characterized by social coexistence in the fraternity regime, in which everyone helps each other, solving difficulties and fixing problems. To live the Christ is also to live with one's neighbors, accepting them according to their imperfections without intending to correct them, but rather accompanying them with kindness, inspiring them to the spontaneous walking and change of conduct. So I said at the beginning that I was going to tell you a story that I think can exemplify this whole thing. So there's this book called Into the Wild, written by Jon Krakauer. And there's also the movie Into the Wild, written and directed by Champagne. And I believe that most of you have already seen the movie, or maybe read the book, or even know the story somehow, because it was in the news for quite some time. So it is a true story of a guy called Chris McCandless. He was a young Emory University graduate from a wealthy suburb of Washington, D.C. And he was a gifted athlete and scholar. He was like a great guy. And after graduating with high honors from high school in May 1990, Chris tells his sister Corinne that he intends to cut off all relations with his parents. He is disgusted by their attempts to control him and by what he sees as their immortal and materialistic lifestyle. So he donates all the money he has for college, $25,000 of his life savings, to Oxfam, a charity that fights poverty and hunger. And in June of that same year, Chris sets out on a journey to experience life in the wilderness and never contacts his family again, leaving them to become increasingly anxious and eventually desperate. Now, why did he do that? So the reason why he did it basically was because he discovered that his father secretly had a second family during his childhood, and he feels betrayed by his parents and angry at them. Also, there were a lot of there was a lot of violence in the house when he grew up, and his parents were fighting all the time, like explicitly fighting, and they wanted to divorce. They had a conversation with their, because Chris has his sister Corinne, and they were only two. Well, Corinne is still alive, but so their parents had a meeting with them to discuss the divorce, and they wanted to get divorced, but this divorce never happened. So the kids went through a lot of hardship, and it was very conflicting and confusing for Chris. He couldn't understand all of those things, right? And his end goal was basically so he goes on this adventure, let's say like that, and his idea was to get to Alaska and to live off the land. So he wanted to seclude himself, to isolate himself from society. He wanted to live his life alone. Well, he didn't intended it to be forever, but he wanted to, at least for a while, live in the wild and live off the land without anything, without money, without any materialistic thing, only him and nature. So off he went, and there's a quote, actually. I want to read a few quotes here because I think it is really nice to explain of those things. So when he gets there, he writes, "So now, after two rumbling, so he in this adventure, it took him 2 years to get to Alaska. And during these 2 years, he met a lot of people, and he worked as well. He faced some difficulties. He was beaten at least one time. That is why we can see in the book and also in the movie. But yeah, so see, he had a lot of difficulties also, but he met some nice people that actually wanted to make him give up, to um, convince him not to do it, right? So he gets there and he writes, "So now, after 2 rumbling years, comes the final and greatest adventure, the climactic battle to kill the false being within, the false being within, and victoriously conclude the spiritual revolution." So what he wanted was a spiritual revolution. He wanted to become better. That was his end goal. No longer to be poisoned by civilization, he flees and walks alone upon the land to become lost in the wild. So his intention, he was in a journey to discovery. So his intention was to free himself of all of those things, this materialistic thinking and all of those bad things that can come with society, right? So during his adventures, there was this guy that he met, and he was an elderly man, and they lived together for a few months. And there's a very interesting thing that this guy says to Chris before right before he leaves for Alaska. And he says, when you forgive, so about his situation with his family, right? So this guy says to Chris, when you forgive, you love, and when you love, God's light shines on you. So this was an attempt to persuade Chris not to go, but Chris was very convinced, and he went to Alaska, right? So in April 1992, Christopher arrives in Alaska and finds an abandoned bus, which he sets up as a campsite site. And at first, Chris was content with the isolation, the beauty of nature, and the thrill of living off the land. He hunts wild animals, he reads books, and he keeps a diary. And that's how we know a lot of the things that happened to him, because he kept a diary. Sorry. But gradually, life becomes harder and he becomes less discerning. And his supplies begin to run out, and he realized that nature is also harsh and uncaring. So, reading one of his books, which is called Family Happiness and Other Stories by Leo Tolstoy. I'm probably not saying the name right. He finally understands true happiness. And the main part from the book, what made him realize what is true happiness, is this. So it says in the book, I have lived through much, and now I think I have found what is needed for happiness. A quiet, secluded life in the country, with the possibility of being useful to people to whom it is easy to do good, and who are not accustomed to have it done to them, and work which one hopes may be of some use. Then rest, nature, books, music, love for one's neighbor. Such is my idea of happiness. And then, on top of all that, you for a mate, and children perhaps. What more can the heart of a man desire? Now, I want to stop here for a minute and let's just have a more spiritist view of this quote, if we can. So let's see here. He says, I have lived through much, right? So he has some experience. And now I think I have found what is needed for happiness. A quiet, secluded life in the country. Now, what this tells us, it tells us that maybe we need less than we think, right? And maybe that's that business that we live in cities and all this crazy constant things that we do all the time, and we need to do them, and all these things that we need to buy, all this business that we live nowadays, or used to live, because I know the pandemic is slowing us down a little bit. So it's actually the opposite, what he says here: a quiet, secluded life in the country, with the possibility of being useful to people to whom it is easy to do good. So he understands the importance of being useful to people, or do kindness, do charity. And more than that, what he says here, to people to whom it is easy to do good. Now, people would be happy with a smile, with anything that you could give them. Anything. You don't need to have much. It's easier to be good to people than we might think. And he continues, and who are not accustomed to have it done to them. So so many people could be in need of a smile, could be in need of a ear, just to hear what they have to say, right? So he acknowledged that people are not accustomed to those things. Then he continues, and work which one hopes may be of some use. So through your work, you're doing good for society. It's not like I'm living this life and I'm not doing anything and just taking and taking and taking from the world. No, you're contributing through your work, and hopefully your work is useful. It is good for society. And he understands it needs to be. Then rest, nature, books, music, love for one's neighbor. Again, he understands the importance of having some quality time for yourself and with other people as well. Such is my idea of happiness. And then on top of all that, you're for a mate and children, perhaps, family. Again, what more can the heart of a man desire? Now, Chris reads this thing and he understands that although he was happy there, he something was missing, right? And also, life gradually becomes harder for him, and as I said, he becomes less discerning. So there's some need as well here. And in the pain of realization, Chris concludes that true happiness can only be found when shared with others. And he seeks to return home from the wild to his friends and family. However, he finds that the stream he had crossed during the winter to get to the bus there has become wide, deep, and violent. So it was a current, and he couldn't cross. So he had to go back to the bus. And saddened, he returns to the bus, now as a prisoner. So it's not by choice anymore. And he feels like he's not in control of his fate no more, and can only hope for help from the outside. And he didn't have food anymore because the animals weren't coming and he couldn't find food. In a desperate act, he's forced to gather and eat roots and plants, but it seems like he confused similar plants, and he most likely consumed toxic seeds and became ill as a result. And he dies, unfortunately. And slowly dying, he continues to document his process of self-realization and accepts his fate. And he imagines his family for one last time. He writes a farewell to the world and crawls into his sleeping bag to die. 2 weeks later, his body is found by moose hunters. And shortly afterwards, Corinne, his sister, returns her brother's ashes by airplane from Alaska to Virginia in her backpack, in a way of it's a what's the word? Well, trying to do probably a last wish that he would have, or acknowledging his adventurous spirit. Now, the last phrase that is in the book and in the movie, I'm not sure if he wrote that, but I think it is an invitation to thought, right? And the last one is, what if I were smiling and running into your arms? Would you see then what I see now? So he understands the importance of family and people and forgiveness. So he understands all of that. But the invitation here is for us to think. So he understands and he says, what if I were smiling? So now I understand all of this and I want to be with you, and running into your arms, I want to be with you. Would you see then what I see now. So do we need something that extreme to happen to us for us to understand what he understood, for us to come to that realization that people is important and living in society is important, and it's the way it is for a reason. It exists the way it exists because it needs to exist the way it exists. Now, I just wanted to end with this. And I watched the movie yesterday again. I watched the first time for I don't know, maybe more than 10 years later, and I knew it was going to be hard to me to watch the movie again, because I know I'm very sensitive to those things, and I knew the end, and well, most of people know because it was in the news, as I said before. So it actually made me think a lot, and I hope it has contributed to your evaluation as well, to your life as well. Now, I just want to see if there is any question from you guys here again. No, I don't see any questions. So I hope that the talk was somehow useful. And we are coming to the end. So I just, before we finish, as we always do, I just would like to say that if you need to talk to somebody at this time, or if you I don't know, maybe you're feeling alone and you don't have anybody to talk, and as we just said, it's so important. There is this Your Mental Health website, which is yourmentalhealth.ie. And in the website, you'll find a lot of information and advice about mental health. And you can also text them. The number is 086-1800-280. There's also the Irish Council for Psychotherapy, which is the website is psychotherapycouncil.ie. And also there's the Samaritans. The website is samaritans.org, and the number is 116123. Here in Ireland, there's also this text service that you can just text them, and you guys, you would have the opportunity to, instead of talking, texting only, because some people wouldn't be able to talk or would prefer to write. So there's this text, which is 50808. So that's it, guys. That was the talk for today. I hope it was good. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did, researching the topic and all of those things, and learning about all of those things as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is the bibliography, but it's mainly the Spirits book. And then a few websites where I took all the theories from. And to finish, just to highlight our activities, as always. So we have our public meetings in the form of lives for now every Sunday, as you guys know, because you're here. But if you listening or watching this later, it is every Sunday from 11:15 a.m. to around 12:15 p.m. We also have our talk shows in the form of lives for now, every Tuesday and Thursday at 7:15 p.m. We have our study groups every Wednesday from 8 to 9. And if you want to participate, you can send us an email, or you can send us a message on Facebook. And our Facebook is there. Find us on Facebook, which is Spiritism Society of Ireland, and also our email is spiritismireland@gmail.com. Now, you just need to send us a message if you want to participate in these study groups, because it is done through Zoom. It's not in the form of Facebook Lives as we have. The public meetings on Sundays and the talk shows on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So for those, you just need to tune in on Facebook or YouTube. But for the study group, send us an email and we will send you all the details so you can participate. So that is it. Guys, thank you so much again. Have a wonderful Sunday and rest of weekend. And we'll see you again soon. Bye.